Hey everyone, it's Julianne Meyer, the host of Own Your Wellness. I am excited to be back again, and it's so fun to do this live. There's a lot of little glitches and things that you got to get used to, but it makes it even more fun. And today I have a special guest who I've been wanting to talk to for quite a while now, and we just have been missing each other for gosh, it's been a few months. But I'm excited to have her. Her name is Dr. Heather Clark, and we will be back in just one moment. We do have to do a couple of housekeeping things, and we'll be right back. Back again. So I have to say that the music that is in the beginning always gets me going. Even if I'm in a down mood, it's like, oh yeah, it's time to go. So you guys know I just love to bring on my guests and have them explain who they are, what they're about, share about their wellness journey, and answer questions. So without further ado, here is Dr. Heather Clark. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. As I said, we've been trying to do this for a while now, so I'm glad that we were finally able to make it happen. I actually found you for a previous project that I was working on, and it just didn't end up working out, which actually works out better because this is more fun and it's more interactive. But anyway, not everybody knows about you. I've done a ton of research, but I would love for you to share with the audience. I know, like you're a project or something. But you have an interesting and exciting story, and it's actually similar to my own in some respects. So that's probably part of the reason why I was drawn to you. But so why don't you tell a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, who I am is I help people become unshakable. And the people I work best with are leaders, guides, and healers. And that's rock solid, unshakable, so that you're unstoppable and vibrant again. So it's all about going from stress to bliss, but not the, I just spend all day on my meditation cushion bliss, but the, I am in the world, I am living life, and I am going through everything life is throwing at me, and I'm unshakable doing it. Not like there's never a problem, but it's that resilience to come right back.
I love that because for my own self I've struggled up until recently, really just when things got rough, I wanted to tune out or not be a part of. And of course, that doesn't make it any better at all whatsoever. But you have an interesting story because you haven't always been doing this. And you kind of started in more of a science medical, like this is, here, take this kind of, and let me just have you explain it and because it's so funny to me.
So I'll add the part I don't normally add. And that's when I was little, up until I was about 16, I thought, well, I'm going to be an artist. And then around 16, I'm like, that's not going to work for me, because I had this perception that people who were artists didn't have money. And I was like, I'm a very independent person. And so when I was about a junior in high school, I was like, well, I'll go into pharmacy. Sure. Why not? And I remember my mom was like, well, school is really hard. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. Yeah. Okay. So school really was hard. And I worked quite a bit, and I got out and I was like, okay, as soon as I get out into the world, this is going to be fine. So I got to my residency. I was like, nope, this sucks. Okay, but as soon as I'm done with my residency and start my real job, it'll be great. Okay, nope, that sucks. And it's not like everything I've done has been terrible. There have been some really wonderful jobs I've had along the way. But what happened was I was working quite a bit, and I got burned out, but not in the, I need a few days off burned out. Not in a, I'm going to take a nap on the couch burned out. This is I can't get up burned out. This is, I would take a shower and then I would have to lay down and rest. And I just thought, what is happening here? And like other type A control freaks, the plan is I just need to push through. Just let me push through this and I'll be fine and I'll get right through this. And that is not what happened. So I went to several physicians, and through increasingly more expensive and exotic lab tests, they kept saying, I don't know, looks like you're fine. I'm like, oh, I'm not fine. Because I used to run, like I went from running, oh, it's only 3 miles today, to I got to sleep through my lunch break. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I finally found a functional medicine physician who listened to the whole story, which was amazing right there. It was an hour an appointment with a physician. And she listened to the whole story and says, well, you have adrenal fatigue. And I was like, oh, I've been to school for a lot of years and I have never heard of adrenal fatigue. So she explains it to me. And I'm like, okay, that tracks. That totally makes sense. And I was like, well, what do I do about it? She goes, supplements. Like, so for a pharmacist, someone who's trained in pharmacy, that's like heresy. That
It is.
And then the other problem was she gave me a 12-page handout. Now, normally when I'm feeling well, I would take that 12-page handout, I would organize it, I would give it back to her, and here's your plan. But I was so overwhelmed. If anybody's ever been burned out, it's very difficult to plan. It is very difficult to just do basic functional things, let alone like, oh, what should I do? And I ended up forging my own way, but I realized later that I did a few things that set my recovery back because timing is really important. The type of supplements, what you're doing, you kind of got to know what you're doing if you want to speed it along. And as I began to feel better, it occurs to me, I think I could help other people with this. So I got training as a functional medicine specialist and was working along helping people recover from adrenal fatigue and burnout, which is joyous. I don't know if you can see the smile on my face. I'm like, it's great. And so then I got into some business coaching because I wanted to build the business. And if you've ever been coached before, you find yourself doing things you would not normally do.
Yes, this is true.
So
I can attest to that.
Exactly. So the upshot is I did a lot of things I would not normally do. And what happened was I had 3 people in 10 days say, well, Heather, you're psychic, right? And I was like, what? The first person, I'm like, I don't, whatever. So anyway, what's the rest of this reading? And then the second person, I'm like, what do you even mean by that? Am I going to have to wear a turban and long flowy dresses and carry a crystal? Like, what does this even mean? She's like, oh, well, you read energy. You're very intuitive. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm not psychic. By the third person, I was like, geez, I'm going to have to look into this. And I did. And it wasn't from a, let me explore my beautiful gifts point of view. It was a, let me prove to you this is not a thing so we can all move on and get back to building this business. Okay, so because I had leaned into it, there was so much that opened up and it was actually terrifying.
Yeah.
And once I kind of got over myself, I realized, okay, first of all, I have been able to help people so much more deeply and so much more quickly that I guess I don't care what other people think. This is what I'm doing. And that's when I began to realize, oh no, this whole problem, burnout is actually, it's a spiritual problem. Your soul goes and evolves on you. Maybe you didn't want it to, but there it went. And then who you really are and how you're being, your identity, get really, really far away. And all the stress and tension in life is in the gap between them. So that's when I got really clear, like, okay, this is all about being yourself and being authentic. And of course, people are at a point now when they hear authentic, they tend to just tune out.
Yeah, it's like a buzzword.
Yeah, but I don't mean, this isn't, it can be touchy-feely, but this is, where does the rubber meet the road? Who are you really? What lights you up? What exhausts you? Where do you find yourself blossoming? Oh my goodness, this is amazing. And where do you find yourself like, oh, this is my kryptonite? And it's really helping people get super clear on that. But then the unshakable bit comes in where you just reach down and find that power that's been there all along to put yourself ruthlessly and relentlessly first.
I love that. Something that you're talking about that I find actually fascinating that a lot of people probably don't appreciate in the way that I do, is that you have such a science background. So for you to go from that to something that is technically like woo woo, I mean, it's really not because it's science too. Energy is science,
Mhm.
but it's kind of interesting because you were able to be authentic with yourself and therefore you're able to help others as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Love
had my own identity crisis, big and bad. And then I had a few more. And then I
it.
realized, oh, I'm attaching to something that isn't actually real. It's a
Mhm.
construct and it's a belief. Like, well, there's nothing inherently wrong with that, except that it's not functional. Like, oh, and I was able to just put it, oh, well, that's just not functional. It's not right or
Yeah.
wrong. There's no judgment here. If what you're doing is working for you, keep on keeping on. I mean, you don't have to do any of this.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of us that have a lot of stress, and we can't necessarily articulate all the things that are stressful,
Mhm.
or we feel trapped in this beautiful, gorgeous life we've created. And you're like, you get there, you've arrived, and it sucks. How is this possible? Like, I remember I crying on my way home from work one day, thinking,
Mhm.
I am driving away from my six-figure job in my brand new fancy imported car towards my three-bedroom home that I own all by myself and just share with my dog. And I'm wondering, where did this all go wrong? Like, I had checked all my boxes,
Yeah.
and that was actually worse. So,
Yes, I love that. It's really funny because I actually went to school for pharmacy. And by the time I was finished, I realized I definitely did not want to be a pharmacist. I worked in pharmacy for, I don't know, probably all of 6 years, like during and before I went to school. And I just was like, I literally can't do this. I can't stand the idea of standing in this one spot for the most of my life. Like you stand in one spot, basically. I mean, you walk a little bit, but you spend a good majority of your life literally standing there. And so, you know, and that was hard for me to admit to myself too, because I just spent all those years going to school.
mhm.
What are you gonna do?
And how do I explain to my family? And how do I pay for those loans? And what is going on? Yeah.
Everything. It's, and the world doesn't always understand your life. So
Yeah, right? When I got
I
out
know.
to get into business, my whole family was like, "But what are you gonna do with all this?" And then people need to figure out, "Well, how does that doctorate fit in with what you're doing?" And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Why is that important to you? It's okay that it is, but let's talk about why that's important. What's really underlying that?" And then a lot of people are like, "Okay, never mind."
You can let it go.
Yeah.
I love it. So I'm curious, since you're unshakable, there has to be some sort of practices that you do on a regular basis or even daily that keep you centered. I'm curious what those things are.
What a great question. Thank you so much. I, while I believe in meditation, I am not a big meditator.
Mhm.
What I do is more of a moving meditation and
Mm.
just noticing things around me. But I think the practice that probably is more along the lines of what you're talking about is I reinforce my connection with the divine every day.
Mm.
And for me, that keeps me not only grounded on the planet, it also keeps me connected with the divine me. So
Mhm.
it's easier to discern what's truly me and what's my identity that's kind of having a little meltdown about things. So that's huge. And there's a million ways to do it. Million ways. I just like, divine intelligence, create a conscious connection between me and my higher self. And that's it. And then I just keep listening. Um, Other things are I listen to the words that come out of my mouth and that are running through my head.
Mm.
And one of the things that I have found most powerful for me is I did a great deal of focus and effort to pay attention to the word should and remove it from my vocabulary. Because if I really mean should from the obligation standpoint, that
Mhm.
forces me to be very explicit about putting the obligation on myself or someone else. And if I don't, it helped me not only clean up my language, which wasn't my focus, it helped me clean up how I was operating on the planet.
I like that. It sounds, well, actually, it sounds kind of hard because paying attention to what you say is time consuming. To actually pay attention and be present, it takes effort. I mean, it's not always like when you're first learning to drive and you have to pay attention.
Right.
It takes practice.
It's what I do like that analogy, because when you're first learning to drive, you're paying attention to everything. It is a great deal of effort. It's a lot of focus. And that's when I first eliminated should. I was noticing it myself. I was noticing it in other people, which was less popular with my friends and family. But I'm like, is that truly an obligation you're wanting to put on me? Is that what you're really asking? And then that was like step 2, inviting them to reevaluate what they're truly asking of me.
Yeah.
Because kind of how I'm wired, I'm like, I'm not putting up with it. That doesn't work for me. Like, no, I'm not taking that as an obligation. If you'd like to ask me, that's great. And that's a way that works for me. That isn't aligned for everybody else to just push back, but totally works for me. Use it all the time. But yeah, when I'm hearing what I say, like just the other day, something was coming out of my mouth. I was like, wow, really, Heather? Really? Is that what we're doing? I'm like, hang on just a second. I need to breathe. I need to center. Nope, don't really mean that. Here's what I actually mean. And I find that really helpful. And it also helps me be present, because that's part of being unshakable, is living in this moment. I'm not ignoring the past. I'm not ignoring the future, but I'm living like at the pinch of the hourglass. I'm living right at the pinch instead of, oh, what should I have done? Not that I never do stuff like that. Let's just be clear. And not, okay, well, 3 weeks from now, I got to worry about, like, okay, that's 3 weeks from now. What can I do now? I can reach out to that person and done. So it's that constant, what's really happening now?
Well, that I love that you talked about that, because the other day, up until recently, I noticed that I had this really bad habit of being super angry at other drivers. And I know that that's fairly common, but I finally figured out what was behind it. And it has gone from here, like down to practically nothing now. And every time I notice it in myself, I ask that question, what's this really about? And every single time it's been out of fear. Like, I'm afraid that you're going to hit me and I'm going to get hurt. I'm afraid you're going to hurt somebody else. I'm afraid I'm going to be late and people aren't going to like me. There's all these things and I just realized that. And once I realized that, it was so much easier for me to just like let it go.
I love that because that was my deal with traffic too, except that for me, what it boiled down to was, how dare you disrespect me? Like, oh, that's interesting, Heather. This total stranger on the highway is somehow disrespecting you. And then, because I also believe everything's happening for me. So what's in it for me? Okay, well, where am I not respecting myself? Where am I allowing disrespect to happen? Where it feels safe for it to come out for me yelling at cars cutting in front of me.
It's funny how just even a small perception change can completely change your experience of life. It's like just that, well, it's not small, but to consider that life is happening for you instead of, why is this happening to me? It's like, well, maybe I should be paying more attention. And, it's kind of interesting for me, because once I started looking at it more like that, my experiences changed too. So for example, yesterday I was getting my hair did. So, I'm feeling all saucy. But I was so excited about it. I forgot to lock my car, which isn't that big of a deal normally, except my computer was in there. And, like also my, what's it called? The thing where whatever the thing is, this little jobby right here where I save everything, all of my interviews and, my life,
only everything.
Yeah, only everything. And it all happened. And I left the car unlocked. Now, old me, I would have somehow, like, it would have been stolen for sure, because I wasn't even in a nice place in town. But nobody bothered my car. No, nothing happened. And I know it's because I changed my perception about life happening for me. So I didn't need that lesson. I didn't need the lesson of my car being broken into and being mindful. Because if I'd been mindful, I would have locked it, things like that.
I love it. And that shift in perception,
Mhm.
whatever the shift is truly everything because a lot of our issues are identity issues, which isn't
Mhm.
exactly the same as ego, but it's real close. And and that's essentially a worldview. That's your
Mhm.
worldview is your identity. And it's not only
Yeah.
how you see the world, but it's how the world perceives you. It's how
Mhm.
the world relates to you. So I love that. I love that you identified, well, if I had worried about this, it would have been stolen. And while we can't know for sure, we know for sure, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what the world is going to reflect back to you.
Well, yeah, exactly, because the saying, "When it rains, it pours," didn't come from nowhere, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So, like, if I'm focusing on how everything's going wrong and I'm focusing on all these things, then, those things keep happening. But as soon as I was able to change my perception, and it really seemed it took a little while for me, and, sometimes I fall back into that. But it's things have changed. Things have definitely changed. And even things that would normally take me out for weeks on end because I'm so upset, I'll let myself have a little pity party and I'm good for like, after
Yeah.
10 minutes, I'm good to go again. So,
Well, and the people who are trying to tell you that once you achieve a certain whatever, that that'll never happen to you again, it's just BS. I mean, I'm sorry, run. Those
Yes.
aren't people who appear to be grounded in how things actually work. I was just telling a client yesterday about it's not never getting down again.
Mhm.
It's about building that muscle to pop back out of it. It's about finding the new way to get back out of it because we're human. Of course, there's going to be problems, but it's that
Yeah,
unshakable rebalancing quickly in a way that really works for you. That's the key.
it is. I'm just curious, how is there any little tips or tricks that you could tell the audience that will help them maybe in those little moments? Because I know you got to start small. At least I did.
Um, it's really interesting. Most of the time, it's starting small, but occasionally it's just like
Quantum leap.
quantum leap, huge thing. But where I would start first
Yeah.
is putting yourself ruthlessly and relentlessly first. And the ramp onto that, 'cause that's a super highway. But one of the on-ramps is asking yourself, if I were truly putting myself first here, what
Mhm.
would I choose?
I like that you specified because I understand what you're trying to say about putting yourself first, but a lot of people don't even know what that looks like because especially women, because we're so used to putting our kids and our family and everybody else in front of us, men too. But I'm just saying, since I'm a woman, I understand a little bit better. But it's hard to even realize that we're doing it.
Well, and here's where it gets really fun. So, using the example of putting yourself first when you've got kids. Sometimes putting yourself first means caring for your children
Mhm.
because you're not doing it out of obligation. So, Julie, I know you know this, but I just recently went through and I won't bring us too far down, it'll be fine, but a really beautiful experience. My mother became ill. She was in hospice for about a week and passed. And one of my aunts said, "Oh, Heather, you're such a dutiful daughter." And it just stuck in my craw because I realized I feel zero obligation to be here. Really,
Mhm.
I'm the only one that could have helped dad. There's no other way it could have happened,
Mhm.
but I was not operating from obligation at all. What I realized, if for me to completely put myself first, it meant caring for her and then caring for the family and being a stand for what's going to happen here and helping to coordinate healthcare and all of that.
Mhm.
It was part of why it was so glorious is because there was no obligation.
I
And
love
so,
that.
yeah, and I was able to move through it not only powerfully, but unshakably, where I'm accepting support. I'm asking for support. I would be in the middle of leading a meeting with the physicians and the teams, and then I would stop because I needed to break down and cry. And I cried
Mhm.
for a solid however long it took, which, sometimes was just a few seconds, sometimes it was a couple minutes, came right back. All right, next item on the agenda. We're doing this, we're doing that. And that's how that worked for me. But I think the key of putting yourself first is looking at, what am I doing out of obligation? And what am I doing because I truly want to do it? Because most people truly want to care for their kids.
Yeah.
Most people not always want to show up to work, but for the most part would like to show up and do a good job. But it's a whole different vibe if you're doing it from the energy of, I have to, versus I want to. Because you don't have to. I was doing a presentation and was talking with she was just such a lovely woman. She worked at a bank. And she's like, well, I have to go back. It was a lunch meeting. I have to go back this afternoon. I was like, you do not. You do not. You can take your purse and never return there. And you could see how she kind of like, I like, okay, well, now let's get to why you show up. Is it truly because you have to? And what it boiled down to for her was because I, for the most part, enjoy the job and I enjoy the financial support. Like, great. So you're choosing financial support. You don't have to do it from that job. You can choose that job. And, in one moment, she was great. Her whole countenance brightened up. She was happier after that. And that's available for everybody.
Yes. And it's a lot more powerful instead of, like it's being done to you. That's, I stuck in a job that I didn't want to be in for way too long because I was afraid to leave. And I felt obligated to go. And I was such a victim in my own eyes. And then I finally was like, you know what? I have to stop complaining about this or do something about it. And as soon as I changed my attitude, everything changed. So, taking on that responsibility is actually empowering. And why wouldn't you want to choose a better feeling than something like, oh, I should do this. I have to do this. Oh, well,
because the culture at large and the way most of us are conditioned puts us right on the drama triangle. I'm sure you've heard of it, but for people who haven't, in the 60s, Dr. Stephen Cartman came up with this idea of the drama triangle. It's got a flat top. One side is the hero, the other side is the villain, and then the point at the bottom is the victim. And the game is to be the biggest victim. And the hero, the benefit to them is they don't have to deal with their own stuff. Everybody can make the villain wrong. And this is what seems like makes the world go round, but it doesn't. That's what keeps us trapped. It's what keeps us stressed. It's what keeps us not living the lives that we truly desire or even knowing what that life is. And it's stepping off of that and making it more, I call it the freedom triangle, but really the powerful creator of your own experience. It is possible. Yeah. And from the outside, your life might look the same as it always has, but you're joyful, you're unshakable. And I just want to add, when you were sharing about how, the victim, I totally had that, especially when I was burning out. I was like, I'll never find another job. I had no basis for that. At the time, they weren't paying the $30,000 sign-on bonuses anymore. It was only $3,000, but it was a sign-on bonus. I could have dropped the spatula for counting pills and left and found a job that afternoon. But because of stress changes your perception.
It does.
I invite everybody to just entertain, what if my current perception is simply a function of stress? If I wasn't stressed, it's possible I wouldn't see it like this. And that can give you just that little bit of light that can expand.
I love that. We do have to go to commercial break, but I definitely want to touch on this some more because I find it fascinating and I just really appreciate it. So we'll see you in just a moment. Right. So you guys, I know I'm having a fabulous time, but we do have to go to commercial break. So without further ado, here we go.
3, 2, 1, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey, we are back again. So if you guys want to reach out to me, this is I can't ever figure that out. You'd think I have it down by now, but that's my number. You can text me there if you want to reach out any questions about the show, if you want to be on the show, if you want to speak with me directly, you can obviously do that there, or you can email me as well. But I really actually, I'm going to put this on pause. First, I want to say hello to our guest because I have the worst habit of forgetting to say hello. So Dustin was on earlier, and I just wanted to say hi to him. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I'm so glad that he joined us. And of course, Helene's in the house, and everybody else who's watching who has not commented. I just want to say hello to you as well. And I'm going to bring back Dr. Heather Clark so we can continue our conversation. Hello.
Hello.
So I love that you were talking about, I'm just going to recap for anybody that's joining us now. We were talking about stress and how it limits your perception. And that is so true because you can only see, like, all of a sudden the world goes whoop, down to that because you're scared or you're stressed or you're overwhelmed, all those feelings that can come up with being stressed out. And, a lot of people can't necessarily change certain situations right away. What would you recommend to somebody that needs to sort of, I don't know, release some stress?
Well, it depends on the source of their stress, what works for them, and whether or not they're on the burnout continuum.
Yes.
So, the experience of stress, a physical release is often very helpful. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir when I say, if it's appropriate for you, get a little exercise, do some deep breathing. If it's appropriate for you, perhaps some meditation, lots of things that can be done. And I say where you're at on the burnout continuum, because if you've got adrenal fatigue or burnout, there comes a point where exercise is actually worse. It makes things dramatically worse real quick. So if you do a workout and you're just tired a little bit after, that's not you. But if you do a workout and it takes a day or two to really recover, that's probably you. So you might dial it back a little. But from, a tool to use all the time, I like the tool of what's actually true here, and just listing what's true. And then separating it from my feelings about it and my perceptions and my judgments. Like, this is horrible. Okay. What's true is my experience of this is that it's horrible. That may or may not be actually true. Like, what is it about this? Like, oh, I really screwed that up. Okay. That may or may not be true. Perhaps I made a mistake. And sometimes that's had negative outcomes. And sometimes that's actually been very, very beneficial. Okay. But I'm still experiencing stress. Fine. Like, occasionally you'll hit on something that shuts off your stress response system immediately. But for the most part, it dials it back little by little, which then shifts you into, a calmer state. And of course, deep breathing. I like inhale for 6, hold for 4, out for 8. But the magic of that is the counting gives your thinky mind something to do.
Exactly.
And then you've held your breath for a moment and had a longer exhale, because the magic's in the exhale. Those are some quick things that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Or even to just notice. And one of the things that's true is I am stressed. Okay. That might not be exactly true. I am feeling stressed. Okay. Now, what do I mean by stressed? I am feeling anxious and depressed and scared, and like, just list everything that might be true. And usually when you hear it out loud, it's like, oh, okay. It doesn't necessarily change it, but it sure changes the perception of it.
It also takes some of the power out of it. So I love that. Some, you don't know this, but I worked in addiction recovery for a long time. And actually, I am again. But the point, though, is that there's a saying, and it's, you're as sick as your secrets. And it gives it less power when you talk about those things. So, it just takes some of the sting out of it if you can even say it just to yourself. And I love that. Something else I want to point out, that just for the audience to really reiterate, it was the breathing. And if there's a few people watching that watch religiously, which thank you. And so they've heard me say this, so I'm sorry. But,
No, it's bless you. You get it again. Enjoy.
yes, enjoy. And let's reiterate. And it's not like everybody needs reminders anyway. Even to myself, I'm saying this more to me probably than anybody else. The thing is when you think about breathing in particular, if you think about when you're stressed out or you think about your anger or you're upset, what are you doing? You're holding your breath. So if you want to relax, just simply breathing, it makes sense because, that's how you relax. Breathing. It helps bring oxygen, and you need that. So I'm curious too, because I know that play is important as well in people's lives. And what do you consider play? Or because for me, I used to think it was watching TV. Now I realize for me regular TV. I've still watched things like this or, something that's going to help me or, learn. But what do you consider play?
There's so much that could be play. What a fun question. First of all, I'm the proud parent of a 7-month-old puppy. So
Oh.
play, I have built that into my life now. But in addition to that, there's a lot of aspects of what I consider my quote job, because it's my business, that's play because it's quite creative. Putting together graphic design things or websites or building videos, that's a playtime for me, which is fun. Other things are my partner and I will watch paranormal videos.
I love those.
I know, but just to play with I don't think that one's true. And that's really cool. And then we're just like, how come they aren't asking good questions? Why aren't they waiting for a response? That's weird. That's fun for us. But I would think play is really anything that can somehow put you in touch with a part of the real you. It's allowing that inspiration to channel through, even if to somebody else it doesn't look like play. It doesn't matter who gets to decide what's play. You do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that because what's good for one person, I'm just like, whoa, no, thank you. And, and I'm just like, I can't, no.
Like,
But
my sister-in-law loves karaoke. It is so restorative for her. And for me, that's my nightmare. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to be there. I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to. So I love that. Yes, I completely agree with your point.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because something I want to bring up too is I've found that you can find play in the most interesting places that if you're paying attention, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. I had no idea I was going to like that. For example, because of COVID, I live in California, so we've been on lockdown, like a lot. And so anyway, but back when we had the stay-at-home orders, my boyfriend and I, we just started dating and literally just started dating. And we were a month in and now all of a sudden we're just stuck with each other with nothing to do. Like we can't go anywhere. So we were very inventive. We literally went and flew a kite, things like that. And it was so much fun, but I didn't think it would be.
I love that. Yeah, and it's doing something that's a little bit random.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then another thing too that I've noticed too is I went to school in Italy for art. So yes, I thought I was going to be an artist too, and I actually am more of an artist now than I was. But I was drawing, and once I finally got through that voice, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, and all that, I actually was like, I realized, oh my gosh, I haven't had a thought in how long? So I was so in the zone and just really in the moment. And it was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. It was like a drug.
Yeah, that feels like a flow moment. And as I think of some of the play that's most fun for me, it's total flow moments where you're just like, what? Wow, that was a lot of time that passed.
Yeah. Yeah. I notice now, with coaching and stuff, I have to do a lot of it online because of COVID. And I can sit there and be on the computer for hours and not even realize it. And I'm not talking down the rabbit hole Facebook. I'm talking talking to someone or working on something with my business or something like that. And it's just amazing. It's like, oh my gosh, I need to move. this isn't good for my body.
Like the puppy schedules breaks for me. So
There you
that but I completely understand where you're
go.
just in the zone and people are like, you're just staring at that computer. It's like, no, I'm
Mhm.
considering possibilities and I'm helping people. Yeah, I totally get it.
So something I want to mention before I forget is your podcast. I'd love for you to tell our audience a little bit about that because I think it's pretty awesome.
Thank you. Oh, this has been so joyful. I thought I would like it. Oh my God, I love it. I love it so much because it's all about helping people become unshakable in their
Mhm.
life, body, and business.
Ah,
Because all roads lead to Rome. If you're having stress in one area of your life, chances are stress is everywhere, or it
right.
might be real hard to address the business or work aspect, but you can address something else and then still enhance how unshakable you are. And
Yes.
it's really designed to get experts on to help people who are leaders, guides, and healers. Because those are the people that tend to work with other people.
Mhm.
Um, and I like all walks of life, but I have just noticed that I have a real resonance with people that identify with that. And you don't necessarily need to be in a leadership position to be a leader. You don't need to be
Exactly.
in a healer job to be a healer. So,
Yes, no, that's really well said too. And leadership, it happens all the time. And whether you
yeah,
want to or not, even in your own life for yourself. I love
exactly. And then it's to bring inspiration and practical tools to help people become unshakable now, like right now, not in 10 minutes, not in 10 years, right now. So
I
it's
love.
just, I just love it so much.
So I have a question for you. When it comes to connecting with your higher self and your divine self, or however you
Mhm.
our audience would put it, just so everybody feels included, um, do you notice that what you eat makes a difference?
I, yes and no.
Okay, I'm
And it works
curious.
both ways. So what I have noticed is when I spend more time in the connected space,
Mhm.
running things through the divine me, the expanded me, the infinite self, whatever, I tend to naturally choose things that are more supportive for my body. And when I allow, like, oh, I'm sure this crap meal will just be fine.
Mhm.
And then I'm sure, like, I'll just make this slightly less good choice. And then I notice I spend less time in the connected space.
Mhm.
And then I tend to choose things that are not terribly nourishing. Like it's a tendency that I have had in the past. And it's a chicken and egg thing. So
Mhm.
it's just really fascinating. So usually one can lead to the other. Like, okay, time out, vegetables only this meal. Like I'm getting back on, and then I'm more connected. Or time out, I'm going to spend some solid time in this connected space, and
Mhm.
then I'm naturally inspired to eat things that are way more nourishing.
And I love that because it's true. I mean, it really is the chicken or the egg with a lot of things too. For me, it's I love that you say sometimes you make that decision that you're going to eat those vegetables. Because to me, I call it the little me. So I guess my inner child. I'm like, sometimes I got to parent her and be like, you know what? Sorry, you had some M&Ms today. You need to eat your vegetables. And because I know that's what's best for me. And for me to get back into, if I notice my emotions aren't quite, they're kind of trying to take over because I'm really good at honoring my emotions, but not being led by them. So if I notice something like that, I'm like, what have I been eating? I can always track it back to my behaviors. Did I sleep enough? Did I move enough? It's it's like a kiddie pool. Our bodies are kiddie pools. You throw something in, it affects everything.
I completely agree. And I think that works for the physical body, the emotional body, the mental
Mhm.
body, the spiritual body. It it all affects everything else. And
Yes.
and I'm sure you've found this with clients as well, but maybe the focus starts out, I want to improve physically,
Mhm.
and they've tried and they've done all these things, and that's why they've hired the coach. And you're just like, yes, great, we're going to do that, but we're going to come in from this other direction. We're going to start at the emotional layer. We're going to start at the spiritual layer or wherever, because you
Uh-huh.
don't have to quote attack the problem head on.
No.
Because when you attack something, it tends to fix it in place. So
Yep.
instead, oh, we'll just work with it, but sneak up on it.
I love that, and it's true because usually, I mean, because I studied nutrition, so I help people with their nutrition, but it's rarely about that. Everybody knows like what they should be eating and how much water, those are just facts. But how come you're not doing it then? Let's figure that out. Let's work around that and figure that out because that's really, what's going on underneath that's keeping you from making choices that you show yourself you love yourself and you're putting yourself first. And sometimes it is like for me, I want to stay up late, but I get up really early. So that's not a good choice. So one of the ways I show myself and put myself first is going to bed. It's not always the little child of me is angry, but
Right. And
I do it.
and what I find helpful is as I'm doing something like that, this is how I am nurturing myself in this moment. Yes,
Exactly.
Heather, I recognize that you'd rather watch something silly on TV.
Yep.
And you also know your eyes are going to pop open at a certain time in the morning. I'm going to nurture myself by going to bed. And that self-talk is
Yeah.
helpful. I love it. But yeah, it's almost, I really wonder if the whole thing isn't, it's about how much love you're allowing yourself to take on board.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's a really good point. And people, yes, I know that that's like part of my identity for a long time was the hero because, I took care of my mom when,
Mhm.
that started. I was on my own when I was a kid and all this. Well, the only reason why it was like that was because I made it like that. And it served me well. It protected me when I was a kid, but it no longer serves me. So it's kind of interesting that now that I'm starting to love myself and letting it in, the more it's showing up and the more I can actually see what's already there. It's
Yes.
there,
Yes.
but we sometimes can't see it.
Can't see it and like the client I had earlier this week, she's got a trauma history,
Hmm.
and for her, she has a subconscious belief that or had rather, that it's not safe to be loved. Like, okay, well, let's deal with that. So we shifted that, and then, she was able to kinda come along. Of course, occasionally, it's a lightning strike and everything's different, but for something like that, it's cautiously letting more love in. And is it possible that if I let more love in, that would be okay? And in
Yeah.
fact, what has triggered what's been happening is that there was more love in her life and she couldn't tolerate it. So,
Yeah, it's kind of like that emotional set point where we're like,
yeah,
"Ah, this isn't safe anymore," and we sabotage it.
yeah,
I'm definitely guilty of that, especially with money stuff. But I think we all have our things that we, deal with or whatever. But something that you've mentioned a couple times that I'm curious what your thought is because I know what I think, but I'm curious since you're the expert. Um, you know, I feel like sometimes even when you are able to have those like lightning rod moments about things, it doesn't mean it never shows up ever again.
no.
But you just have a better understanding. I think that a lot of people expect it to just be gone because, oh, now I understand. Okay, cool. Like she gets that, it wasn't safe. Like she had that belief, but that doesn't mean it just goes away forever because you realize that.
I suppose there are a few things that go away forever when you realize it, but no, by and large, no, it'll be around again. That's fine. It'll be in a different guise,
Yep.
but you'll be in a completely different place. Your
Mhm.
soul will have evolved to a different place. Your identity will have come along or been more stretched. You'll experience it differently.
Yeah.
And it's that's not necessarily bad, even though the experience can be incredibly unpleasant.
Mhm.
At least for me, and clients have found this helpful as well. Like, what if this is happening for me? What's here for me? What's right about this I'm just not getting? Wh- Where's the hidden joy?
Yeah.
Where's the, and don't, if it's been something truly horrific, don't spiritual bypass your way to, and where's the hidden joy? No, no,
Yeah.
move through the suck. You can't,
Mhm.
it doesn't work to move around it. But if you can move through it, do your shadow work, and then get to the place of curiosity, like, okay, well, I wonder what's going to work here. Like, I wonder what's
Yeah,
helpful
no.
here.
I love that well, you don't necessarily know this, but like I'm known for joy and like mindfulness, and that's my thing. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden your problems go away. And that doesn't mean that you're, going to be Pollyanna about everything. It's being able to look at what's going on and work through those things that, like for me, because I'm going to talk like me, work through my stuff, work through
Mhm.
it, and then find those moments while I'm working through it that I can find joy. Even if it has nothing to do with whatever it is that I'm going through, I can look at something and laugh at something for those few minutes and escape, like, for example, sadness, because somebody I know recently passed away as well. And it was a freak accident and it was completely unexpected. And so that brings up a whole lot of stuff. But
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, especially with that, they feel guilty when they actually have moments of happiness when they're mourning, or, they feel guilty about that, or they think it's never going to end. I mean, there's all these things, but I just learned to just sort of feel the feels and let them go. And it
Mhm.
makes so much easier to walk through that and just enjoy those little moments. Like maybe I watch a dog video and it makes me laugh. So why not? I got a break from the sadness for that little while, and there's my joy.
And it's not dishonoring the sadness. It's
No,
not ignoring the grief. There's joy encoded in grief. And
there
it's
is.
weird. Well, I don't want to say that judgy, but at least for myself, it's strange to not laugh a little bit as you move through this. And at least that's what I've noticed, especially recently. The more I just allow the emotions to flow and come out, the
Mhm,
easier the whole process is.
mhm.
Not like it's super easy, but it's certainly part of allowing it to be unshakable. And it's
Yes.
also because I don't really care what other people think. If I need to stop and cry, I'm stopping and crying. Whereas in the past, well, you're trained as a pharmacist, like, no, that's a sign of weakness and they'll
Yep.
shred you. Like, you have to puff
Yes.
up and go the other direction. And it took a long time. And it was really, I'm so glad we're talking about this because I just got a new insight. So I was back in the hospital, back in the same situations that I was in that really burned me out, and showing up very powerfully and taking no BS,
Mhm.
stopping and melting down. I actually, the chaplain said something he thought would be super helpful, and it was so loaded with patriarchy. I could not let it stand. And I turned to him and said, that type of comment is unacceptable and inappropriate. And I moved on with what I was doing. And I think that poor gentleman had not experienced that before, but I'm like, well, it's your turn, dude.
Well, at least you were able to
I
say your truth too.
absolutely. And in the past, I wouldn't have said anything and I would have fumed about it for weeks and made him wrong and put us all on the drama triangle. But I don't always see things in the moment, but I saw it
Uh-huh.
in the moment and that's not okay. Doesn't mean he's
Uh-huh.
a bad person. I was able to respond immediately, not react, respond. Like, that's not okay. We're not having that. And now moving on with this meeting.
Oh, I love that. Yes, and it's just so much easier when you can let things go. I mean, it's easier said than done sometimes, and I know that my brain likes to hold on to things, but I definitely try and work through them and set them down and change my perception as I go along. But I love that, and you never know how you might have helped the next person he's trying to help,
Yeah. 'Cause he's a
because
lovely
you're
man. He wanted to help. He just didn't realize how tone deaf that was. Like, that hasn't been okay for decades. Don't do that.
Yeah, and you're probably the first person brave enough to tell him. So,
I'm sure.
fabulous thing as opposed to negative, because
Yeah,
he was trying to help. He wants to help it.
yeah, and so perhaps that was a benefit for him. I
Maybe.
have received feedback later when I've done things like that, that really did help the system, but my focus was more about I was able to respond,
Yes.
which then helps me let it go. I don't have to later, "Oh, Heather, you really need to let it go." "Well, I can't because I didn't, but," and then I turn on all those circles. It's more like, "Nope, not having that," and next.
I love it.
Mhm.
Well, we are almost out of time already. Uh,
Alrighty!
I know. I know, it always goes so quick. Is there any last words of wisdom you'd like to leave with the audience, or is it easier for them to reach you at your website or your Facebook, or what's the best?
Website, Facebook, or the podcast website. It's all just as easy at vibrantagain.com. It's got a way that you can connect with me. You can send me.
Perfect.
I'm actually fairly easy to get in touch with. And I just want to thank you so much. You're such a glorious and wonderful person. You've got
Oh,
so many beautiful people listening to this. I'm so excited. And I am just so grateful for the opportunity to chat with someone like-minded and to be able to share some ways that people can to maybe bring on some tools to step
yes,
into being more unshakable. Thank you.
I love it. Thank you so much. So we have to go. And unfortunately, I want to keep talking, but or listening, I guess, is actually more accurate. But anyway, until next time, we will see you on Monday. Thanks again, folks.